Hello friends, welcome to my channel. Today, I am sharing a story about curiosity, discovery, and the kind of feelings you never expect to have. This story took place on a late Saturday morning, during a time in a young man's life when he was just 19 years old. Fresh out of his teenage years, eager, and still figuring out the complexities of the world. He had always thought he knew himself well enough. His relationships had always seemed straightforward to him, and girls were a part of that story. But men? They had never factored into his thoughts or feelings. Or so he believed. But that morning, everything changed for him. Let's title the story, The Morning I Met Another Me. It was a late Saturday morning when I finally dragged myself out of bed. The apartment was quiet, bathed in that soft, lazy glow that only accompanies hangover mornings. The faint smell of stale beer still lingered from last night, a reminder of the party we'd hosted. My roommates, Tom and Jason, had been in rare form. Jason had kept everyone laughing with his over-the-top stories, and Tom, ever the center of attention, had spent most of the night with a beer in hand, charming everyone around him. Tom and I had been friends since university, our bond built on countless nights out, shared jokes, and the kind of trust that only forms after years of living together. Tall, broad-shouldered, and effortlessly confident, he had this magnetic presence that drew people to him. Though he was straight, Tom had a playful side. He'd often tease me in that harmless way some straight guys do, knowing exactly how to get a reaction. It was never mean-spirited, but there were moments when his antics left me wondering if he enjoyed blurring the lines just for fun. I was 19, freshly out of my teenage years, and still fumbling through all the newness that came with adulthood. Girls had always been part of the picture in my mind. Fleeting crushes and flirty interactions that had come and gone without much thought. Boys? They weren't even on my radar. My life had always felt simple in that regard. Girls were a part of the natural story of relationships I'd envisioned for myself. Men had never even entered the picture, let alone crossed a threshold of thought or emotion. That morning, I padded downstairs to check on him. His girlfriend had left early, heading off to help a friend who'd overdone it last night, and I figured he was probably nursing a well-deserved hangover. As I approached his room, the door was slightly ajar, the soft hum of the TV spilling into the hallway. I called his name softly, but got no response. Curious, I stepped closer. Through the narrow opening, I could see the edge of his bed. He was lying on his back, one arm draped over his forehead, the other hidden under the covers. His breathing was slow and steady, his chest rising and falling in a hypnotic rhythm. The dim light from the TV flickered across his face, and for a moment, I considered just leaving him be. But then something caught my eye, a subtle movement beneath the blanket, the kind that made my heart skip. I froze, unsure of what to do. My first instinct was to back away, to give him his privacy, but curiosity rooted me to the spot. The sight was oddly intimate, not in an overt way, but in how it revealed a vulnerability I wasn't accustomed to seeing in him. Tom, the confident, larger-than-life figure, caught in an unguarded moment. And that was when it hit me. I wasn't used to this. I wasn't used to being so unsettled by a man, by the sight of his body and the quiet ease with which he lay there. My chest felt tight, my stomach coiling in a way I couldn't explain. I wasn't even sure I knew what I was feeling. The emotions were jagged, unfamiliar, like sharp knives of curiosity and fear warring inside me. At 19, I had always imagined I knew myself. My feelings were straightforward, predictable even. Girls, crushes, dates, those had always made sense. But now, standing there, my mind felt fractured. Was this a feeling? Was this what it meant to be attracted to someone who wasn't a girl? The idea was terrifying, but it felt real. This wasn't just harmless curiosity. There was a pull, an ache, a tug in the pit of my chest that I couldn't shake. I tried to rationalize it, to tell myself it was just a passing moment, a fluke. But it wasn't. His toned, bare chest, the way his breathing was steady and rhythmic, the flicker of light playing on his skin. All of it swam in my mind like a dream I couldn't wake from. I was panicked. I was unsteady. I was 19 years old, and I had never thought about men this way, never allowed myself to wonder if a man could make me feel like this. My whole life had been simple and uncomplicated until now. Until this moment, until Tom, until his body, his presence. I could feel my knees shaking slightly, the way my thoughts felt out of control. My hands clutched the doorframe harder, my breaths shallow. I knew this wasn't rational. I knew that if anyone walked by and saw me like this, it would make everything worse. I knocked lightly on the doorframe, desperate to pull myself out of this spiral. My voice came out too casual, too steady, as if trying to convince myself this was nothing more than a routine check. "Hey, you alive in there?" His head turned slightly, his eyes cracking open to meet mine. His smirk was there, casual, sharp, confident. It was a reminder of who he was, the Tom I knew and had always trusted. But beneath that smirk, I could sense something I hadn't before. Familiarity mixed with raw vulnerability, a depth I didn't know I could find so disarming. "Barely," he murmured, his voice low and scratchy. "What time is it?" I swallowed hard, trying to steady my voice. "Just past noon," I said quickly, deliberately casual. "Figured I'd check if you needed anything. Water? Aspirin?" But my heart was still pounding, that faint uncertainty gnawing at me. My mind was a mess of half-formed thoughts. What was this? What was I feeling? I had no answers. My body felt off balance, unsure, and the anxiety simmered beneath my skin like a storm. And suddenly, everything felt unfamiliar. And maybe I was starting to realize that I would have to confront this feeling soon. I forced a casual chuckle as I looked into his eyes. "Nah, just thought I'd check. Didn't want you to die of dehydration or something." He shifted under the blanket, sitting up slightly, and for a split second, the blanket slipped just enough for me to catch another glimpse of his toned stomach. My throat went dry. My face felt hot, and I suddenly wished I could just vanish into thin air. "Yeah, well, that would be a pretty epic way to go, huh?" he teased, rubbing a hand over his face. His smirk widened as he tried to shake the sleep off. "Thanks for checking, though. You're a good guy." But I wasn't sure if I was a good guy anymore. My mind was spinning, and every nerve in my body felt like it was humming with confusion. I wasn't sure if I should leave the room, stop looking, or confront these emotions head-on. I had spent my whole life avoiding this kind of uncertainty. Relationships, feelings, everything had always seemed simple. Until now. I shifted my weight uncomfortably against the doorframe, trying to think of a way to leave without seeming weird. My hands were in my pockets, clenched into fists as I tried to hold myself together. "I'll, let you rest. Just thought I'd check in," I said, managing to sound light despite the storm in my head. "Yeah, cool," he said, waving me off with a casual flick of his hand. His eyes still looked tired, but there was an underlying warmth to his voice. "Thanks, man." I turned on my heel and started to back away. But as I did, my own thoughts kept pulling at me like chains. I wasn't sure how much of this feeling I could suppress or ignore. What did it mean? Was this a one-time thing? Was it just curiosity? Or was this something more? My mind felt like it was full of questions with no answers. I paused in the hallway for a moment, staring at my shoes, trying to steady my breathing. The thing was, this wasn't just about Tom, or his smirk, or the sight of his body. This was about me. It was about realizing that feelings could emerge in unexpected ways, at unexpected times, with people I never thought I'd feel this way about. My mind had always been so simple, so sure, so straightforward. But here I was, at 19, unsure of myself in ways that felt enormous and insurmountable. I sighed, trying to shake it off. Maybe I'd overthought it. Maybe it was just a moment, fleeting, brought on by a combination of exhaustion and curiosity. Maybe I could bury it and move on, like so many other thoughts before this. But I knew that wasn't true. I couldn't unsee what I had seen, nor could I silence the way my body had reacted. I wandered into the kitchen to make myself a glass of water, my hands trembling slightly as I reached for a cup. I leaned against the counter, my head lowered, staring at the pale light filtering through the window. My thoughts were a mess, as chaotic as the feeling in my chest. Was it wrong to feel this way? The question gnawed at me. Maybe it was nothing, just curiosity. Or maybe it was something buried deep that I wasn't ready to confront. Either way, it left me in this strange limbo, stuck in a moment I couldn't fully understand. I leaned back, taking a deep breath and trying to steady my mind. For the rest of the day, I couldn't shake the feeling. It lingered, unresolved, sitting heavy in my chest. I found myself replaying the image of him. The way his muscles looked in the soft glow of the TV, the casual, unguarded way he lay there. I couldn't deny that I liked the sight, that I liked the way he looked. It wasn't just about attraction, though. It felt deeper, like I had stumbled into a part of myself I didn't know existed. I wondered if it was a phase. I wondered if it was just curiosity, like everyone says. But there was no way to know. The problem was, I wasn't sure how I was supposed to figure this out. How was I supposed to process feelings like this, especially at 19, when everything about myself felt uncertain and untested? The questions lingered, unanswered, as I made my way through the rest of the day. By the time evening came, the weight in my chest had grown, but I knew I wasn't ready to talk about it, let alone confront it. Tom and I exchanged half-hearted jokes over dinner, and I laughed in all the right places, but my mind was elsewhere. He seemed fine, easy as always, completely unaware of the turmoil running through me. Maybe that was a blessing. Maybe ignorance was better, at least for now. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. As I lay in my bed that night, staring at the ceiling, I knew this wasn't over. I knew this feeling, whatever it was, would stay with me. And the worst part was, I didn't know if I was ready to face it.